It's been many years since the vaults first opened all over America, leading to the survivors of the Great War venturing out into the wide open land to try and rebuild and create new lives for themselves. Despite what recent tales have been told, the world back in the early days was extremely bleak, heavily desaturated, and unbelievably dark, as all that surrounded the survivors was death and destruction. The world certainly was not a glamorous and colourful one, especially after the horrific world-ending event. As humanity tried to rebuild, they would go on to witness and experience those hardships, as they not only had to deal with the barren, barely inhabitable lands, but also the new threats of heavily mutated creatures and scientifically enhanced ones. For one man, however, this was his opportunity to create something new and to forge a new utopia world formed from his ideologies, which would inevitably lead him to making enemies with many in his way. But as he continued on his quest to create this new world, he would lose his identity and turn into a mangled monster who would lurk in the depths of his new home. This man would go on to become the one known as the Master and would eventually set himself up within a cathedral in New California. So who is the Master? What is their backstory? What was their ideology and what was their fate? Well, in today's video we will be celebrating 25 years of the Fallout series, and we'll go on to explore the mangled monster who wants to forge a new humanity and world. This is the story of the Master from the original Fallout. But before we begin, as mentioned within the introduction, Fallout turns 25 years old this year, and to celebrate that, GFuel were extremely kind enough to send me this amazing collector's edition of their new flavour, the Nuka-Cola Quantum, which is absolutely incredible, and with it they have also given you guys a massive 30% off this specific flavour exclusively with today's video. So you can finally treat yourself to John Caleb Bradberton's incredible creation of the Nuka-Cola Quantum, and I gotta say it's a really tasty drink, and I'm not just saying that because they sent it to me, but there's been many times in game where I've been genuinely curious about how a Nuka-Cola Quantum, that glowing blue drink, tastes, and if it was meant to taste like citrus berry, it's amazing, and I can see why the people of Fallout absolutely love it. But you can also get a 30% discount off their other amazing new flavors such as Glad's Key Lime Pie and their brand new sour gummy worms flavor that just released today on the making of this video. But if you want the classic flavors like my personal favorites, the Clickbait, Moist Critical's Divine Peach, and PewDiePie's Lingonberry flavor, using my code will still give you a nice 10% discount. So for 30% off of the Nuka-Cola Quantum flavor and other new flavors such as Glad's Key Lime Pie and the Sour Gummy Worms, as well as 10% off of all the other existing flavors and shakers, use my code WiseFishYT or visit the link in the description below. So thank you to GFuel for this opportunity, and thank you all for supporting me enough to be able to do this collaboration and do something to celebrate 25 years of Fallout. But with that said, let's get back to the video. The Master's story starts all the way back before the Great War, where he was known as the man Richard Moreau. Not much is really known about Moreau during this time, with not much information to really speculate. The only thing that was ultimately known about him during this time was he was given the right to seek shelter from the war within the Fallout shelter known as Vault 8. With this, he accepted and took to living in it just before the bombs fell. For the few years the vault was sealed for, once again not much is known about what Moreau got up to within the vault itself, but it is pretty evident that he did not get on with many people in there, maybe due to different political views or just being trapped with people for over a decade. By the year 2092, Vault 8 was finally opened and a few ventured out. For Moreau, however, he was quickly exiled from the vault as he was found guilty of murdering one of the other members of Vault 8. Leaving this vault due to this situation, Moreau travelled over 400 miles to the south and found himself within the newly founded trading center known as the Hub. Setting up within the Hub, Moreau would establish himself as a local doctor and would also change his surname to Gray. For months, if not years, Dr. Gray became renowned for being an incredible doctor, with one man known as Harold, who was a caravan master, considering him to be a brilliant doctor as well as philosopher. Moreau, or Dr. Gray's story, continued like this for years until 2102, when little did he know his life was to change completely due to an event that would happen within the Mariposa military base. During this fateful event, Gray, along with Harold, Francine, Mark, and a handful of others set out into the wide open wasteland to investigate reports of trade caravaneers being attacked by supposed strange creatures surrounding the Mariposa area. By June of that year, the expedition party quickly found themselves under attack as mutants located within the base took out many of the party members who were trying to break into the shelter. Finally getting into the base and fending off against the mutants, Harold and Gray would suddenly find themselves part of the injured members as a mechanical crane would hit them, knocking them down. Harold, luckily enough, was able to survive the attack and was fit enough to leave the base and get to safety. For Gray, however, he was not so lucky, as he was knocked into one of the mysterious vats that were all over the Mariposa military base. Due to his extreme injuries, Gray was unable to move at all, and because of it had to suffer floating in the vat filled with slime for days on end, with him almost drowning multiple times. Little did Gray know that this vat actually contained what was known as the FEV, the Forced Evolutionary Virus, an artificial virus created by the company known as WestTech Corporation. This virus was originally created to help with all of America before the bombs fell. Its goal was to force changes in the subject's DNA to originally create a cure for what was known as the New Plague that was spreading all over the country. The creation of the FEV would continue throughout all of the years leading up to 2077, and within that year, all of the Californian research assets would be moved to the newly created Mariposa military base, and whilst here would start testing on human test subjects, much to the protests of many of the staff. At this point though, the ultimate goal was to create a new batch of super soldiers by manipulating their DNA to bolster their forces. But things were not to end well for the original staff members within the military base. In the end, all of the staff members of WestTech within the base would be killed due to many different circumstances. However, the FEV survived, and its effects were made clear through the mutants that lingered there. As Gray laid within these tubs of the FEV, he would start mutating into a mess of flesh, and would ultimately become the being that would be later known as the Master. Finally regaining consciousness, Gray was finally able to drag himself from the vat, but his mutations continued on as the virus had completely soaked into all of his skin through the many days he had been stuck within the vats. But the FEV virus didn't destroy Gray. Whilst it changed his appearance, making him horrific to look at, Gray quickly found that his mental capacity had increased dramatically, and he was now capable of resolving the most complex of philosophical questions. With this, Gray quickly wanted to explore this new process and took to experimenting on animals who were infesting the military base. Here he would dip them into the vats to see how the virus changed their DNA. One of the most crucial experiments that took place involved a rat and a dog. Placing both of these creatures into the vat at the same time, they both mutated into one being. This inspired Gray, who came to the conclusion that the way forward in life was by unification. This was the only way forward for life on Earth. But Gray now suffered a new issue. He had run out of test subjects. All of the animals within the base had been depleted. He needed something new to continue on with his experiments. In December of 2102, Gray went back to experimenting, but this time on himself, as he would go on to inject the virus into various areas of his mutated body. Doing this, Gray was able to gain the ability to neurologically link with electronics, more specifically with computers, which allowed him to access all of the base's databases. With this knowledge, Gray started capturing anyone who ventured into the facilities and immediately started experimenting on them by dunking them into the vats. But unfortunately for Gray, this provided no new information or any successful results. By January 2103, Gray had a breakthrough and found what had been making his experiments unsuccessful. That was due to the subject's radiation exposure, which was causing problems when they came into contact with the FEV virus. Solving this solution, Gray would go on to create the first ever intelligent super mutant who was assimilated by Gray as a fellow mind, creating the fledgling Master hive mind. The Master's ambition of creating unity had now begun, and now it was time to seek out other individuals to bolster his new society and create his new vision of a united humanity and world. Starting slowly, the Master was able to build his new force of super mutants, which would develop over the next 30 years. But this was to immediately come to a halt within the Great Winter of 2130, where, once again, the Master was unable to find suitable subjects for his army. By the following year, the Master came up with a new plan to capture subjects for his settlements. This time, he would seek out trade caravans who would cross over the wasteland and capture them. The humans who fell witness to these raids were oblivious to what was actually going on during them, believing they were just being attacked by wasteland monsters. And because of this, and not wanting to find a solution to these raids, this helped the Master's forces grow even further, and at a much more rapid pace than it originally was. By 2137, there were so many super mutants to sustain mass production. Despite the success rate being just 15 to 20%, 50% of the successful ones who came out of this process would go on to join the Master's army, which was quickly becoming a potent military force. This army would later go on to be named as Unity by the Master himself, as he saw these successful warriors as his one true vision for a better humanity and world. With this all set up, it was now the time of the Master's rule, and with the super mutant army known as Unity, it was finally time to expand all over New California to add to their ranks and to make their true power known to all who lived out within the wider wasteland. 20 years passed, and in the year of 2152, the Master would go on to enlist the aid of Morpheus, a member of a doomsday cult. Morpheus was one of the lucky ones, however, as he was able to keep his human form. The reason why the Master didn't change Morpheus into one of his super mutants was so that he could use him as a spy and send him and many others out on missions to see what was going on throughout all of the region. With this, Morpheus and his doomsday cult worked under the Master's rule and became known as the Children, tasked to act as Unity's public face, as well as being used to make sure their operations were kept secret. For a while this continued on, but in the year of 2155, the Master and his children made a huge breakthrough as they were going to capture a caravan of Vault Dwellers from what was known as the Los Angeles Vault, a Vault prototype used by Vault-Tec to show off their technology and what fallout shelters really could look like. Getting to the Vault, the Master transferred his command as well as his immense and pervasive body to the Vault and ordered Morpheus's cultists to renovate the building above it. This would establish their new base of the Cathedral, with the Master's children now being named as the Children of the Cathedral, to still be led by Morpheus, who was the Master's second in command. To keep this location protected, the Master would put in charge a group of Nightkin, the most elite super mutant troops, to guard the Cathedral, using Stealth Boy technology to allow them to be unseen by many who may enter the area. Setting up within the Cathedral, the Master and his children were able to gather huge amounts of data from the prototype vault, which included the most vital piece of intel possible: the location of all the other Vault-Tec vaults located over the rest of the country. With this knowledge, super mutants were sent out all over the landscape to hunt down these vaults and gather their resources and its people, to allow the Master to dip them into the vats and further expand his force of Unity. Most of these expeditions were successful, however one was not. That was when the super mutants ventured out to Vault 12 and found themselves engaged in battle with the once inhabitants, now ghouls. Fighting went on for a while until Set, the ghoul leader, explained who they were and their history, and with this called for a ceasefire. By this point in time, it seemed inevitable that Unity and the Children's campaign to take over all of New California was inevitable. However, little did the Master know that out there within the wasteland was one individual who would bring about his downfall. That individual would be the Vault Dweller from Vault 13, who was desperately in the search for a new water chip for his rapidly failing vault. As this Vault Dweller entered the Cathedral to discover all of the Master's work, they would go on to encounter the Master themselves, hear of their history and plans for the future of humankind, and after this hostile encounter would set off a nuclear weapon within the Cathedral, destroying it and everything they had built up in the process. Unity still remained, however, and immediately retaliated to the attack on the Cathedral by launching their own attack on Necropolis, desperate to find the Vault Dweller responsible, but by that point it was too late. On the 20th of April, 2 months after the destruction of the Cathedral, the Vault Dweller struck again, dealing the final blow to Unity by destroying the place where Master's rule all started from and where the FEV was founded to start the super mutant rule on the land. That was the Mariposa military base. With that final blow taking place, the Vault Dweller ventured out into the wider wasteland to never be seen again. But the war against the super mutants didn't stop there, as the Brotherhood of Steel would pick up where they left off, driving them all the way with minimal loss of life on both sides of the conflict, which would help the Brotherhood solidify themselves as a major power throughout all of the wasteland, but wisely stayed out of the overall power structure. For most of the super mutants, many looked at trying to get back into society, forming their own civilizations, like that being Broken Hills, which would be founded by the super mutant known as Marcus and the Brotherhood Knight known as Jacob, who wanted to make a place where humans and mutants could live together side by side. But whilst many super mutants just want to live on within the wasteland, there are still many out there that want to further their species, capturing individuals on their travels and turning them into one of their own. Despite his downfall, the Master's influence on the land was extremely memorable. Grey's once intellect was beyond anything anyone could have hoped for, but sadly due to the virus's effects, he would go on to cause so much destruction that would set a precedent for all of humanity. Despite now being dead, many of his super mutant children live on, desperately seeking a way to further his ambitions. And on top of that, many of his early experiments on non-humans still roam the land, attacking anyone they see. These include the abominations such as centaurs and floaters, which stay together most of the time, almost as if they have a kinship for one another. In the year of 2281, one Night King under the name of Tabitha led a group into the Mojave Wasteland, named the State of Utobitha, located at Black Mountain. While small in numbers and located in a remote locale, still holding the ideologies of the Master, this group was seen as extremely dangerous to the rest of the populace of the Mojave Wasteland, as they carried out regular brutal attacks against travelers. But on the other hand, Marcus, the once creator of Broken Hills, would go on to found Jacob's Town in memory of his once friend Jacob of the Brotherhood of Steel, and here would house all super mutants who wanted a safe haven and a place where they could welcome friendly humans who were open to a more peaceful, unified land. The story of the Master is one of a dark time during the Wasteland's history. If he were to have gotten his way, the world would be a very dark place indeed, with everyone working under his rule. Thankfully for all of us, the work of one individual from Vault 13 meant humanity and the world can go back to being safe from his rule, and allows everyone from all over the country to be their own individual, not being a part of one unified race. Whilst most of the super mutants are now driven away, many do exist still, with a few of them holding those past beliefs. However, many just want to live side by side with humanity in a safe place for their new race. Whether someone will come back and try to reform the Master's full ideology using the FEV virus to enhance their cause is yet to be seen. But for now, this has been the story of the terrifying mangled creation once known as Richard Moreau, now known as the Master. And that is the story behind the once man known as the Master from the original Fallout game. I want to thank you all for watching this celebration 25th anniversary of Fallout video. And if you do want to support this channel, make sure you pick up a tub of the latest GFuel flavors like the new Coca-Cola Quantum, as it really helps the channel out, and also they are really good drinks. Or if you want to support me another way, you can become a patron or YouTube channel member like these amazing people here, such as my small fishes, my big fishes, Christopher, Last Persona User and Arto Creme, my YouTube channel Wise Ones, Fiery Italian, Ico the Wolf and Sith Lord 906, my sharks Well Such Gaming and Jason X117, and my Megalodons Sinus, Jacob Garcia and Chernobyl Stalker. Also make sure you check out my other lore videos in the description below and leave a subscription if you haven't already, or a really nice comment. It's nice to read them and it just really helps get the video out there. But that is all for now. Thank you all for watching. Check out my GFuel link to support this channel further. I shall see you all in the next one. Cheers.